NASCAR continues to push for the numbers to be slid back on the cars for the 2022 season. A lot of throwback paint schemes have officially been revealed for the Darlington Throwback race. And for the first time since last year, we will have a full capacity for a NASCAR Cup Series race. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a lot of NASCAR stories to discuss here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. We're going to go ahead and start off with all the paint schemes that are not associated with throwbacks. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those. The first one we're going to take a look at is Michael McDowell's 2001-21 car parts scheme that we are going to see this weekend at Kansas Speedway. I think they did a really good job on this car. The number and the color look really awesome. I think it's going to be a good thing to see. It's great that Car Parts is stepping up to play and sponsor Michael McDowell this weekend, and I really like this paint scheme a lot. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Austin Dillon's 2021 Huck scheme that we're going to see debut at Dover International Speedway. I think Huck has sponsored Austin Dillon before in the past, if I'm not mistaken, but I think they did an awesome job on this car. The blue looks really awesome on the car, and I think they did overall a very excellent job. Hoping that this car may be able to give some really good specs overall for Austin Dillon, but I think they did a great job on this paint scheme overall, and I cannot wait to see it out on the racetrack at Dover International Speedway. The next paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Carson Wentz 2020 Luther's BBQ scheme that we are going to see this weekend in the Truck Series race at Kansas Speedway. I think they did an excellent job on Carson Ozar's paint scheme. It's not the best paint scheme I've seen so far this year, but I think they did overall a solid job on this paint scheme. I'm definitely looking forward to see this truck. As Carson's had a pretty decent year so far for East Motorsports, I'm definitely looking forward to see this paint scheme, though, for sure, out at Kansas Speedway in the Truck Series. And the final paint scheme before we jump into the throwbacks, the regular one, is Joey Gase's 2021 ExploreBranson.com scheme that we are going to see this weekend here at Kansas Speedway. I'm going to say River Racing so far generally has had some pretty good paint schemes this year, and this one is also a really good one as well. It's also at Branson, which is in my hometown state. They did overall a good job on this paint scheme. It's really cool. Definitely looking forward to see it out on the racetrack here at Kansas Speedway. And now we're going to jump onto all the throwback paint schemes that eventually have been revealed. So there's been some good ones that have been revealed yesterday and today, and some not so good ones and some doozies that we're going to talk about. So let's go ahead and start off with the throwbacks. The first one we're going to take a look at is Josh Williams' throwback to Rusty Cruz, as he's driving 92 for DJM Racing. He's throwing it back to Rusty Cruz. I think that they did a good job on this paint scheme from the images they're showing on the screen. I think it's a very solid paint scheme overall. It definitely looks nice. Definitely looking forward to see that one. I think they did a very solid job on that paint scheme, in my honest opinion. The next throwback we are going to take a look at is Timothy Peters' throwback. He's driving the 25 Reckley WAR. He is throwing it back to Bobby Hamilton when he drove for his own organization, Bobby Hamilton Racing. Again, I think they did a great job with this paint scheme overall as well. The colors match up very good with the regular car that we've seen from that. I think they did a great job on that, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack. The next throwback that we're going to take a look at is Riley Herbst's throwback to Tony Stewart's rookie year. He's throwing it back with the Henry Painting Shops. I think that's the company that sponsored him. They're throwing it back to Tony Stewart's rookie year paint scheme, and I think, in my honest opinion, they did an awesome job on this one. I think the Xfinity Series and Truck Series have carried the throwbacks overall this year so far. I think they did a solid job on this paint scheme. Definitely like this paint scheme and throwback quite a bit. The next throwback, though, I'm not a super fan of it. So we're going to now take a look at Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s throwback paint scheme, which is supposed to be a throwback to Ricky Craven. Now, this is not a good throwback at all. This is a half-ass attempt at a throwback. If you're going to do a throwback, in my honest opinion, you need to either go fully all the way in, or you need to not go fully in. As a normal paint scheme, I think that this is a solid paint scheme. But for a throwback paint scheme and attempt to do Ricky Craven, they just half-assed it. It was lazy. It's the worst throwback I think I've ever seen. In my time watching sports since they started doing the throwback race, I think that this is the least creative and the most less effort I have seen on a throwback paint scheme in my time watching this sport. It is awful. It genuinely is super bad, and they did an awful job on this paint scheme. Whoever designed this needs to be fired, because it is absolutely terrible, and it's my least favorite paint scheme so far of this year. And there's been some bad ones in Cup this year, but I think that this takes a cake as the worst paint scheme for throwbacks so far this year. The next throwback is actually a lot better. We're taking a look at Justin Haley's throwback to Robert Presley's legacy. He's driving 77 for Spire Motorsports. They're throwing it back to Robert Presley. I think they did a very good job at throwback to his 1990 colors. They did a really good job on that paint scheme, in my honest opinion. Definitely looks really good for sure, and much better than Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s throwback paint scheme. The next throwback paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Max Jaskal's throwback, as he's running the 13 car for MBM Motorsports at Darlington. It was announced he's going to be driving that car, and they are throwing it back to Mike Skinner. It looks very, very similar to it. They did an awesome job on that throwback for sure. It looks nice. Definitely looking forward to see that throwback out here at Darlington International Speedway. As I'm currently editing today's video, another throwback paint scheme has officially revealed. We're going to look at Sheldon Creed's 2021 throwback scheme to Jason Loeffler when he drove in the truck series in the number 2 truck. I think for Ultra Motorsports, they're throwing it back to that truck. They honestly did a really, really good job on this truck, in my honest opinion. I think the colors match up really, really good, and I think that this is going to be a great throwback. So I think GMS had some pretty good throwbacks so far this year, and this one's no exception. They did a very good job on this throwback paint scheme, in my honest and sincere opinion. Anyway. Next throwback paint scheme you're going to take a look at is Kyle Larson's throwback paint scheme. This is actually to his first race car when he began racing. They're throwing it back to his first race car when he raced in like sprint cars, little like midget cars as well. I think that this paint scheme compared to the Ricky Stenhouse Jr. paint scheme is much, much better. In my honest opinion, I think Herbst Motorsports has been one of the better teams in the Cup Series for sure when it comes to their throwback so far. And I think that the colors really match up the throwback as well, by the way. I think when it comes to throwbacks, you kind of have to match up the car that you're throwing it back to. I think they did a very good job on this paint scheme, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this car out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. The next throwback paint scheme we are going to go ahead and take a look at is Ryan Blaney's throwback paint scheme. This throwback paint scheme is actually to his late models when he began racing back in 2010 and 2011 in his late model car. And I have to say that while I'm not as big a fan of drivers throwing it back to themselves, I think that this paint scheme does look really, really cool, in my honest opinion. And I think it matches up to his late model car. So I think they did overall a really good job on this throwback paint scheme for sure. I'm definitely looking forward to see this throwback paint scheme out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. The next throwback paint scheme we are going to go ahead and take a look at is Ryan Preece's 2021 throwback scheme. Now, this is the better JC Doherty throwback scheme, in my honest opinion, as they're throwing it back to Trent Owens. It's very, very accurate. It's really, really nice. I think that this paint scheme is really, really cool for sure, and a good throwback as well to Trent Owens, who drove the 15 truck. I think it was for Billy Balloon Motorsports in the 15 truck. I think they did a very solid job on this throwback paint scheme, in my honest opinion, and I'm definitely looking forward to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. The next throwback paint scheme we're going to take a look at is James Davison's 2020 throwback scheme, as he once again will be racing at Darlington in the number 15 car. He is throwing it back to Dick Johnson's car that he ran in the Cup Series in the late 1980s and the early 1990s as well at Sonoma International Speedway. To me, I think that this is one of the better throwbacks as well so far this year. I think they did a really good job with this throwback paint scheme for sure. I definitely think it's really good trivia. As you know, James Davison is from Australia. I think he did a really good job on this throwback paint scheme for sure. And I'm definitely looking forward to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack at Darlington International Speedway. And the final throwback paint scheme we are going to go ahead and take a look at is Harrison Burton's throwback paint scheme to his father. Now, they're throwing it back to the Hunt Brothers paint, not Hunt Brothers, the Holiday Inn paint scheme they ran in the Busch Series. Here's the thing. I think it looks pretty accurate in some ways than not. But here's the big issue with this one. They have red instead of green. If you're going to run a throwback like this, they should have ran the Hunt Brothers scheme instead of this one. It's not bad, but they got the wrong color. They did this last year with Eric Jones last year when they threw it back to Tony Stewart. And now they've got this one mixed up again. It's not the best paint scheme I've seen. Again, it's not bad, but they got the color wrong on this paint scheme. Honest opinion, they could have done a lot better on this throwback paint scheme, but that's just my opinion. They could have done a much better job on this throwback paint scheme, in my honest and sincere opinion. And now we're going to jump onto all the other major stories in today's episode. We got a lot of other stories to jump into, so let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. We're going to go ahead and start off with Dover International Speedway, as Dover International Speedway has been approved to have 20,000 fans on each day in May. They're still waiting on the decision for Nashville Super Speedway in June as of right now. This is really good news for sure. I don't remember how much capacity Dover has. I think they have like 40,000 or 50,000 fans, or I can't remember exactly the number of fans that Dover has, but they have quite a few fans that are allowed at Dover International Speedway. But I think especially for the Xfinity Series, the fact that they're going to have 20,000 fans go to Dover International Speedway, considering the decision was not made that long ago for Dover to have fans at the racetrack, is really, really awesome news for sure. I'm definitely happy to see that Dover International Speedway is going to have fans for their upcoming races. It was really, really sad to see for a while that Dover did not have fans, but it's great to see that they're going to have 20,000 fans for their upcoming races. That's definitely some really awesome news for sure going forward on that. And now we're going to jump onto the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about First Pacific Funding, as they're stepping up to the plate for Jeremy Clements once again, and they're going to be funding the rest of Jeremy Clements' unsponsored races, which is 9 races on the schedule. I think First Pacific Funding should be getting a lot of praise for helping out a driver like Jeremy Clements. Jeremy Clements has been very, very solid so far in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I think he's like 7th or 8th in the points right now. He's been super, super consistent to start the year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I think he's done a very, very solid job. The fact that they're stepping up to the plate and sponsoring him is really, really awesome news for sure, because I've been really wanting them to step up to the plate and sponsor Jeremy Clements, or someone sponsor him, because I think he's a very, very underrated and a driver that doesn't have a lot of funding and races for his family. I think it's awesome to see that they are going to sponsor him, because I think it's really awesome news, in my honest opinion, that they're doing that, because I've really been wanting Jeremy Clements to really get a good opportunity to race, and I think, honestly, this is absolutely really, really awesome news for sure. I'm definitely super, super happy that Jeremy Clements has a sponsor that is willing to be committed with him and sponsor him going forward. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to be talking about the Pocono Doubleheaders for the second race. Now, the second race, this Cup race on Sunday, has a official sponsor. So the Cup race on Sunday for the Pocono Doubleheader is going to be called the Explore the Pocono Mountains 350. Pocono Mountains, I think, has sponsored the Truck Series before, not Explore the Pocono Mountains. Pocono Mountains has sponsored the Truck Series back when it began. I think it was called the Pocono Mountains 125, before they extended that to 150 miles. They have sponsored before, but I like the name of it a lot. It's really, really cool for sure. Definitely a nice touch for sure as well, by the way. And I think it's really awesome, definitely, to see that Pocono is going to have a title sponsor. I don't remember if the first one has a title sponsor yet at this current moment, but it's really awesome for sure that Pocono's second race for sure is going to have a sponsor going forward. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Camping World today, as Marcus Lemonis has brought out a challenge in regards to Camping World and said that if you win with the company's paint schemes, whichever company it is, whether it's Overton's, Camping World, or some other paint schemes as well, you will get around $100,000 if you win with that car. I think that's really, really cool, in my opinion, that teams are sponsored. There's not many teams, in my opinion, that are really, really competitive with that sponsor on the car, by the way. I mean, you had guys like Sheldon Creed and Rafael Sard and a couple other guys that have been sponsored by Camping World that probably have the speed to be able to go out there and win. But if you win with Camping World, the $100,000, that could basically fund a team for a whole entire year. $100,000 can go a long way, especially for a small organization, especially if they win. And not all small organizations are fast, of course, but those organizations, if they're able to win races, that would be really, really good money for them going forward. And to me, this is definitely some really exciting news for sure. And I'm definitely happy that they're doing this for sure, because you want to see people be able to get funded going forward. And I think it's awesome to see that they're going to have an opportunity to basically fund it. I think it's really, really cool news for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Seth Smith. As Seth Smith is going to be the intern crew chief for Tanner Gray starting this week. Shane Wilson, unfortunately, has been relieved from his duties from the 15 team of Tanner Gray. Tanner Gray, I believe, currently sits 20th in the points right now, if I'm not mistaken, in the Truck Series. And Shane Wilson hasn't done a very fantastic job so far in the Truck Series here. So they're giving Seth Smith an opportunity. Seth Smith, I believe, has crew chief for Cup Series guys for. I think the crew chief for David Reagan before he retired. So because, of course, this team is associated with David Gillen's organization, and David Gillen has association with Front Row, of course. So a lot of times, a lot of people Front Row end up going over to DJR Racing to crew chief for them. I think Seth Smith has some decent success with David Reagan over in the NASCAR Cup Series when he raced up there. I think it's really cool that Seth Smith's getting an opportunity. I think the goal for Seth Smith is to try to keep Tanner Gray learning, as Tanner Gray, of course, was an NHRA champion and someone had the success last year in the Truck Series. I think ultimately the goal for Seth Smith is to try to get as much experience as he can and do as well as he can going forward, because I think Seth Smith can definitely help drivers get better and perform a lot better going forward. I think it's really definitely some really exciting news that Seth Smith is getting that opportunity to go ahead and crew chief for a driver like Tanner Gray. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories of today's episode, as we are talking about, you guessed it, number placements. So we've been discussing quite a bit on this channel about number placements, in my opinion, why they really don't work. We got an update in regards to number placements. So according to Adam Stern from the Sportsman's Journal, he says the RTA has commissioned Nielsen to study the potential value for sponsors of moving car number decals. No final decision on whether to move the numbers or where to has been made yet, but one is expected by this early summer. First of all, I really don't understand why you have to contact Nielsen to basically tell you if this is going to be more fundable or not. Teams should know if this is going to bring more funding to the organization or not. The fact that you have to go to Nielsen to basically ask them, hey, is this going to be a good idea or not? Or am I going to be able to make more money on my sponsor coming in? Is that going to work out? I think that's absolutely really, really stupid in my honest opinion. But I can tell you right now, I'm definitely not too excited about this in my honest opinion. I think we have to accept that it's coming, really, to be honest with you at this point, because Dillon Jr. is in support of moving back. He's been tweeting basically out, showing the 3-car on his dad's birthday, basically saying, oh, this looks really, really cool. Showed that on Twitter yesterday on his dad's birthday. We have to start accepting it's coming, because a lot of times when Dillon Jr. gets behind it, NASCAR gets behind it, says Dillon Jr. has a really big voice behind it. But I have to say, I'm not really looking forward to the number placements getting pushed back. And the reason they're pushing this back, like I mentioned, is because of sponsorship dollars. And teams think that they can bring funding in, and the RTA thinks they can bring more funding in for more organizations, which I 100% disagree with that. I've said this multiple times on the channel. You can no longer put a sponsor on a race car anymore and expect to get a return on investment. If you want to get a return on investment, you have to activate those sponsors and do cool sponsorship activations with your companies. Look what Hum Brothers Pizza did this past week, and while a lot of people did not have success, Hum Brothers Pizza tried to basically activate a sponsorship with Kevin Harvick a couple weeks ago at Richard National Speedway. And I don't know if really, like I said, I don't know if it really worked out for people, but they tried to do something really cool with that. Last year, Busch gained like 13% sales on some of their companies while and gained 10% overall in their sales from 2019 to 2020. And even look at Haley Deegan. Haley Deegan's getting sponsored not just for sponsor on a car, basically for her social medias. Look at how big her social medias are. They're big. They're asking just for social media as a sponsor, not on a race car. Again, another thing too is that the number being in the center of the door, even Mike Joy brought this up, has been a fixture on NASCAR since the beginning. And it's one of the only remaining fixtures on the car that has remained in NASCAR basically since the beginning. I remember back in the days, and not while I was young, but I even remember back then in 1950s, 60s, they were running the number on the door of the decal, and you're going to move it back. And yes, sometimes cars don't look as good with the number being straight on the door. We've seen it, especially with throwbacks this year. But that's because teams are super, super lazy when it comes to sponsors. And if you think that you're going to put that on the door and it's going to bring more sponsorship into the sport, you have another thing coming. If you want to bring more sponsorship into this sport, you have to activate those sponsors and get involved and get the sponsors engaging with the fans, and sponsors engaging is super, super important. I think that's the number one important thing. I don't think NASCAR and the RTA really understand that. I don't think they're really getting that. I think most fans don't want this to happen. I know it's coming for 2022, unfortunately, but I'm really not excited for it. I'm not excited for it because most fans don't want it to happen like myself, and I think that this is going to really be a bad decision overall. I'm not a fan of this whatsoever. And now we're going to jump onto the final major story of today's episode, as unlike the last story, this story actually has some really, really good news. Bob Pockrass reported this morning at Atlanta Motor Speedway confirmed that they are going to have full capacity for the July race weekend. Yes, you heard that right. 100% capacity for the July race weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This is going to be the first time that there's been full capacity to a NASCAR Cup Series race or a NASCAR race in general since back last year at Phoenix National Speedway, right before the shutdown ended up taking place. And we've been slowly but surely getting more and more fans. We've been seeing more and more races continue to increase their fan bands. We got COTA probably about to have 50% capacity for their races. You've got some other races like Pocono, they're increasing to 50%. And it seems like a week-by-week basis, other areas like Sonoma have gotten up to 33%. Of course, that's in-house in their area, but they're up to 33%. You've got Charlotte's getting up to around that 40% range. And as more people continue to get the vaccine, that's going to increase for a lot of other tracks as well. I cannot tell you how excited I am for Atlanta being the first race to have 100% capacity. Like I mentioned, things are slowly getting back to normal. We've had talks about the infield access where they're starting to bring basically people back into the infield. Of course, you have to be vaccinated to be back into the infield, but they're bringing sponsorship guests and all that stuff back in infield, and that's continuing to increase. And a lot of that is because the vaccine numbers are continuing to increase. I did some research right before the beginning of the episode and checked the CDC on how many people administered, and as of about 2 or 3 hours ago, before I filmed this video, they have said that 144 million people have at least had one dose of the vaccine, and 101 million people have both vaccines. That means about 30% of the country has been vaccinated completely, and about 40% of the country right now has at least had one dose of the vaccine. And there's usually about 1 or 2 or 3 million doses that are being given out every single day. That number is going to continue to increase. of people that are going to get vaccinated going forward. And I think by reason that they made a decision super, super early as much as they have is because of the fact that we're going to probably by then, we're probably going to have double people that are 100% vaccinated. I would not be shocked by the time we get up to July that at least probably 200 million people are going to at least be 100% vaccinated. 100% confirmed to be 100% vaccinated, if not more, to be honest with you. I think that with the announcement at Atlanta Motor Speedway today, the fact they're doing this is really, really awesome. But of course, the major important thing, are masks going to be required? Yes. Masks and social, they're not going to really have it easy to do social distancing, but masks are going to still be required. I don't expect that to change. I expect masking and social distancing to probably be a thing going forward the rest of the year. I think NASCAR will try to remove that by 2022 and things probably get back to normal. And again, I'm a little surprised that they made a decision as early as they did, but I can tell you right now, I am super, super excited. Again, masks are required once again if you're going to go to the event, and there's going to be other things that are going to be announced going forward with this event. But I can tell you right now, we're getting closer to things being back to normal, and I'm definitely can tell you, I am super, super excited going forward with this because I can't believe it. We're finally going to have our first full 100% capacity for races going forward. I think that pretty much a lot more races after this one, they're going to be 100% vaccinated and 100% full capacity going forward. I think this is going to be the first race of many. I don't think every race after Atlanta is going to be full capacity, but I expect like Daytona to be full capacity since they're in Florida. I would expect tracks like Texas later in the year in the playoffs. I probably expect all the playoff races to have full 100% capacity. But yeah, I am super, super excited about this, and I'm really happy that Atlanta Motor Speedway is going to have 100% capacity for their races going forward. So, anyway, that is going to be for today's NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications, see me notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's important pages as well. Link description below if there's that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about Atlanta Motor Speedway having 100% capacity? Are you excited, or do you think NASCAR jumped the gun too early to make this announcement? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about NASCAR probably moving the number of places back in 2022? Are you happy that they're making this decision, or are you accepting it, or are you not happy, and do you think that it's stupid that they're moving the number of places back? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content. Take care, everybody.